I still remember the sound of the rain that night. Slow at first, like a polite knock on the roof, before it turned into a full storm that clawed at the windows of the old manor. I had never been inside a house so vast before. Every corridor seemed to breathe on its own, sighing beneath the weight of years, and every shadow felt like it was watching me. Elias had driven me there himself, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He said very little, only that the man we were meeting could save everything. I had asked what everything meant. He didn't answer. When we arrived, the iron gates groaned open, and beyond them, the house rose like a dark cathedral. Stone walls, arched windows, and those sharp towers that seemed to pierce the clouds. A place too big for one man, but perhaps just right for someone like Adrian Voss. Inside, the air smelled of firewood and polished oak. A tall man greeted us at the top of the marble staircase. He wasn't what I expected of a CEO. No suit, no smile. Just black eyes that caught the light in strange ways, and a stillness that filled the hall. His voice, when he spoke, was low and even, almost kind. "You must be Mrs. Hale," he said. "I've heard quite a lot about you." Something in the way he said it made me shiver. I glanced at Elias, but my husband's expression was tight, almost pleading. He looked like a man waiting for judgment. We sat in the study, all dark wood and heavy drapes. Elias spoke first, his voice trembling as he explained his proposal. I watched his hands, how they twisted together. He wasn't offering shares or a simple business deal. He was offering me, not in words, but in silence. A promise implied. My presence was part of the bargain. I felt my stomach drop. My mind screamed, "Say something," but the words caught in my throat. Mr. Voss, Adrian, watched me for a long time. His eyes didn't wander. They studied, measured, and then, in a tone I couldn't quite decipher, he said softly, "I don't buy what doesn't want to be sold." He turned his gaze to Elias, who suddenly couldn't meet it. A storm cracked outside, and for a moment, the thunder was the only sound between us. That night, Elias left me there. He said it was just for a few days, while the deal was finalized. He kissed my cheek without meeting my eyes. The car drove off, and I was left standing on the marble steps, rain soaking through my dress, staring after the taillights until they disappeared. Adrian didn't offer comfort. He simply opened the heavy door behind me and said, "You'll catch your death out there." I followed him inside, numb and cold. The next morning, I woke in a guest room that could have belonged to another century. Tall windows, velvet curtains, a fireplace that had burned out some time before dawn. A breakfast tray waited by the door, and beside it, a note in elegant handwriting. "You're safe here. For now. A V." The words should have calmed me. Instead, they made my pulse quicken. The days that followed were slow and quiet, but not peaceful. I wandered through the halls, each room more beautiful and lonelier than the last. I caught glimpses of Adrian sometimes, In the library, standing before the tall windows. Outside, by the stables, his coat dark against the snow-dusted grounds. He never looked surprised to see me, almost as if he always knew where I was. One evening, I found him in the conservatory, surrounded by withered roses and glass walls fogged by the cold. He was staring at a single living flower in the center, crimson and perfect. "You keep the dead ones?" I asked. He looked up at me. "I don't kill what's dying. I let it choose when to go." There was something in his voice. A confession, maybe. Or a warning. From that night, I began to see him differently. The cold precision I'd first sensed in him wasn't cruelty. It was control, the kind that came from loss. There was pain in his silence and danger in his gentleness, and yet I was drawn to him. Against every instinct, every reason. I told myself it was fear or fascination, but the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. I wanted to understand him, and part of me wanted him to understand me too. The first time our hands touched, it wasn't romantic. I had tripped on the uneven floor of the corridor. The house always seemed to shift underfoot, and he caught me before I fell. His hand was warm, steady, his grip firm. For a heartbeat, the world went still. "Careful," he said. "This place doesn't forgive clumsy guests." But the way his thumb lingered against my wrist told another story, one he wasn't ready to speak aloud. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the storm returned, louder this time. I got up, wrapped myself in a shawl, and went to the balcony. Below, I saw him, standing in the rain again, face lifted to the sky, as if he was daring the storm to take him. Something broke inside me then. Maybe pity, maybe recognition. We were both trapped. Me by circumstance, him by ghosts I couldn't yet name. When he looked up and saw me watching, he didn't move, just stared with that same impossible intensity. And though not a single word passed between us, I felt the beginning of something I couldn't undo. Something dangerous. Something that felt like the truth. The days after the storm felt endless, a blur of muted light and restless silence. The manor had a way of swallowing time. You could walk through its endless corridors and never find the same room twice, as if the house itself were breathing, shifting beneath your feet. Adrian was rarely around during the mornings. I would hear the faint echo of his voice somewhere deep in the west wing, speaking into a phone, giving orders I couldn't quite make out. His company, his empire, was something I had only read about in headlines. Voss Enterprises, the phantom behind half the city's wealth. Yet here, in his own home, he seemed less like a businessman and more like a man trying to outrun something invisible. One afternoon, Curiosity led me past the library and down a narrow hallway I hadn't noticed before. The wallpaper there was older, faded with moisture, and the air colder. I followed it until it opened into a vast glass house, the conservatory I'd seen before, but larger than I remembered. It was filled with roses again, though not the kind you'd find in gardens. Their colors were darker, crimson so deep it was almost black, petals glistening like they'd been brushed with blood. Some were alive, others wilted, yet none had been touched or trimmed. And in the center stood Adrian. He turned when he heard my footsteps. There was no surprise on his face, only that same quiet awareness that always unnerved me. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Then why leave the door open?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe I wanted to see if you'd come." He moved closer, his voice lowering. "This is my mother's garden. She called it the Devil's Garden. Said nothing beautiful ever grows without suffering." First, I looked around at the dying blooms. "She sounds like a poet." He gave a small laugh, but there was no joy in it. "She was, until she wasn't." Something in his tone made me step closer instinctively. "What happened to her?" His gaze shifted to the roses again. "She fell in love with a man who didn't deserve her. And when he left, she filled this place with everything that reminded her of him. Beauty that hurt to look at." There was silence then, heavy and trembling. I could hear the rain starting again outside, soft and rhythmic against the glass roof. He looked at me, and in his eyes was something raw, a question he didn't dare ask. I spoke before I could stop myself. "And you? Do you still believe love hurts?" He took a step closer. The air between us seemed to hum. "I believe love is a kind of storm," he said. "You don't survive it. You surrender to it." For a heartbeat, I thought he might touch me. His hand lifted, hesitated near my face, but then he stepped back, retreating into himself, as though he'd remembered something forbidden. "You should go back inside, Mrs. Hale," he murmured, "before the rain turns cruel." But I didn't move. "You said you don't buy what doesn't want to be sold," I said quietly. "Then why keep me here?" His eyes met mine, and I saw it. The fracture behind his control, the hunger and the guilt twisting together. "Because I didn't buy you," he said. "Your husband sold his debt, not you. But when I saw you, I realized I wanted something I shouldn't." The words hit harder than they should have. There was no vulgarity in them, only truth. And it was that truth that frightened me more than any threat could. That night, I dreamed of the garden again, only it wasn't dying anymore. The roses were alive, their scent thick and intoxicating, and in the center, someone stood waiting for me, his hand extended. When I reached for it, I woke, breathless, my pulse racing. The next morning, Adrian was gone from the manor. The housekeeper, Mrs. Lorne, said he had left for the city on business. I tried to sound indifferent, but the emptiness that followed him felt unbearable. Days turned into a week. I found myself wandering into the garden again, sitting by the fountain at its heart. Sometimes I spoke aloud, to no one, to him, to myself. I didn't know. Then, one evening, as I stood by the window, I saw headlights cutting through the fog. The car stopped, and Adrian stepped out, his coat damp from the drizzle. When he entered the foyer, he paused, surprised to see me waiting. "You're awake," he said softly. "The house doesn't sleep," I replied. He smiled faintly, as though I had said something he understood all too well. Then he handed me a small box, tied with black ribbon. "A gift," he said, "for surviving this place." Inside, nestled in velvet, was a silver key. "What does it open?" I asked. "You'll know when you're ready." That night, I couldn't help but wonder what he meant. Every locked door in that house now called to me, whispering secrets. And when I finally found the door, the key fit, hidden behind a tapestry in the west corridor. I hesitated only a moment before turning it. The hinges groaned as it opened into darkness. The scent hit me first. Old paper, dust, and something faintly metallic. A library, but not like the others. This one was private, and on the desk, lit by a single flickering lamp, lay a photograph. It was me, taken recently, standing by the balcony during the first storm. My heart froze. He had been watching me, not just noticing, but documenting. Every look, every moment. I should have felt fear. I did, at first. But beneath it was something worse. Curiosity. Why me? What did he see that night that made him decide I belonged here? As I stood there, the rain began again, harder than before, and from somewhere deep in the house, I thought I heard footsteps approaching. Slow, deliberate. I turned toward the door, heart pounding, and in that instant, I realized whatever Adrian Voss wanted from me, it had already begun. The key still trembled in my hand long after I'd opened the hidden door. The lamplight from the corridor spilled across the threshold like a wound of gold, touching dust-covered shelves that stretched to the ceiling. The air inside was different, thicker, heavy with the scent of ink, cedar, and something older, almost metallic, like forgotten time. I stepped inside. The room was a library, yes, but not the kind meant for guests. No polished volumes or framed portraits, only journals bound in cracked leather, stacked in uneven piles, their spines marked with dates. The earliest read 1983. A soft draft stirred the pages on the desk. That's when I saw my photograph again, the one from the balcony, but now there were others beside it. Each captured me from a distance, crossing the hall, reading in the garden, standing by the window with the storm behind me. The composition was careful, almost reverent. For a moment, my stomach turned. But then I realized something else. The handwriting in the margins, looping and sharp, wasn't Adrian's. It was a woman's. She looks like her. Does he see it too? The words crawled across the page like a whisper from the dead. A noise behind me. Footsteps. I turned quickly, half expecting Adrian. Instead, Mrs. Lorne stood in the doorway, a candle in her trembling hand. The flame threw her face into shifting light. "You shouldn't be here, dear," she said quietly. "Some rooms were never meant to be reopened." "Whose handwriting is this?" I asked. Her gaze fell to the journals. "His mother's. She kept records of everything she lost and everything she feared might return." The flame flickered as she stepped closer. "When she died, Mr. Voss sealed this room. He swore never to look at her obsessions again. She thought the past could be rewritten if she could only find its reflection." "Reflection?" Mrs. Lorne looked at me with pity. "You look exactly like her." The candlelight shuddered. I felt the room tilt, the walls tightening around me. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Not impossible," she murmured. "Uncanny." She pressed the candle into my hands and left without another word, her footsteps fading down the hall. I sat at the desk until dawn, reading through the journals. The entries began tender, full of admiration for her son, for the house, for the man she loved. Then the tone shifted, delirious, fragmented. She wrote about visions, about echoes, about the house whispering her name through the walls, and always, at the center of her writings, a name: Elias, my husband. He had known her? No, he couldn't have. The dates were decades apart. Yet the way she described him, the same charm, the same false promises, the realization sank into me like cold water. Adrian's mother had loved a man named Elias, and he had destroyed her. History, it seemed, was repeating itself. By the time Adrian returned that evening, the manor was soaked in fog. He found me in the study, the journals spread open across the table. For the first time, I saw him truly lose control, the mask of calm slipping like shattered glass. "Who told you about that room?" "No one," I said. "You gave me the key." He froze. "I didn't." He stopped himself, exhaled sharply. "Then the house did." "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, voice rough, "that this place feeds on memory. And you've woken something I've tried to bury." He reached for the journals, but I pulled them away. "You knew about her obsession. You knew she saw me in her mind before she died." He looked at me then, and there was no cruelty in his face, only grief. "She used to say she'd see the woman again, the one he took from her. I thought it was madness, the one who Elias took?" I asked. "Yes, The word hung between us like a blade. Then you understand what your husband did, he said quietly. He's not just like that man. He is him in every way that matters. He finds what he wants, and when it stops serving him, he trades it away. You think I'm her? He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know who you are anymore, but from the moment I saw you, I knew I couldn't let history repeat itself. I could smell the rain again, the faint, metallic scent through the cracked window. Lightning flashed, catching in his eyes. For an instant, the world outside vanished. Only the storm remained, and him. Why keep me here then? I asked. Because, he said slowly, this time I need to save her, even if it damns me. That night, I couldn't rest. Every sound in the house felt alive. The ticking clocks, the moaning beams, the restless wind. I thought of his mother, of her journal entries that blurred into prayers, and of the way Adrian had looked when he said those final words. Was he protecting me, or repeating the same obsession she had fallen into? When I closed my eyes, I saw the photographs again, flickering like film in the dark, and behind every image a shadow moved, one that looked too much like Elias. The next morning, the garden was different. The roses that had been dying now bloomed again, vivid and alive, their color returning overnight. Mrs. Lorne crossed herself when she saw them. The house is remembering, she whispered. It always does before something breaks. By dusk, Adrian had disappeared again. No explanation, no driver, no car. And when I went to his study, the desk drawers stood open. The journals were gone. Only one note remained, written in his careful, deliberate hand. If I'm not back by morning, leave the house. He's coming for you. The ink was still wet. The night he vanished, the storm came back. Not gentle this time, not the kind that whispered against the glass, but furious, alive, clawing at the old manor as if trying to tear the secrets from its bones. Thunder rolled across the hills, shaking the portraits from the walls, and through it all, the house seemed to breathe, restless, remembering. I lit every lamp I could find, though the light felt fragile against the darkness gathering outside. Mrs. Lorne had locked herself in the servants' wing hours ago, murmuring prayers under her breath. I should have done the same, but instead, I sat by the window in Adrian's study, clutching his letter until the ink began to blur beneath my fingers. He's coming for you. Those words pulsed in my mind with every crash of thunder. He couldn't mean Elias. My husband was hundreds of miles away, and yet, a small part of me, the part that had learned to read silence, knew he did. The clock struck midnight when I heard it, a car engine in the distance cutting through the rain. The gates screeched open. Headlights swept across the courtyard like two searching eyes. I froze. Then I saw him. Elias stepped from the car as if the storm were his ally. The rain plastered his hair to his face, his smile sharp, familiar, cruel. He looked exactly as he had the night he left me here, except now there was nothing pleading in his expression, only triumph. "You've been difficult to reach," he said when he saw me standing at the door. "Our deal isn't over, sweetheart." His voice sent a chill through me. "There was no deal," I said quietly. He laughed. "Oh, but there was. You and I both know what was promised. You sold something that was never yours." "And he bought something he could never keep," Elias said, stepping closer. Typical of men like him, always falling in love with what belongs to someone else. Something inside me twisted. "You never loved me," I said. "Love?" He tilted his head. "No, but you were useful, beautiful, and now you're leverage." He reached out as if to touch my face, but before he could, another voice cut through the storm. "Step away from her." Adrian stood in the archway, drenched and silent as thunder cracked behind him. For a moment, the two men simply stared at each other, mirror images in the flickering light, one polished, one ruined, both dangerous. "You should have stayed gone, Voss," Elias said, his grin widening. "And you should have stayed dead," Adrian replied. Lightning flashed, revealing something glinting in Elias's hand. Not a weapon, exactly, but something cold and metallic. My breath caught. Adrian didn't flinch. "You can't save her," Elias said. "You'll only destroy her the way your mother destroyed herself." "You're wrong," Adrian said, stepping forward. "I already did destroy her once. I won't do it again." His eyes flicked to me then, not in fear, but apology. "You were never meant to be a part of this. I brought you here because I thought I could stop it. But this house, it remembers what it wants." The air between them thickened, vibrating with the storm's fury. And then, everything happened at once. A crash of thunder, a flash of lightning, and the two men collided. Not with the chaos of violence, but the weight of years of unfinished sin. I remember shouting, the sound of shattering glass, the scent of rain and fire as a lantern fell, spilling flame across the carpet. The manor roared in protest, its timbers groaning like something alive. I don't remember running, only the cold rain hitting my skin, the smoke curling from the windows as the house began to burn. When I turned back, Adrian was at the door, framed in firelight. Elias was gone. Maybe into the flames, maybe into the storm. I never saw him again. Adrian stumbled forward, his face pale, his eyes searching for mine. "It's over," I whispered. "No," he said, his voice breaking. "It's only beginning." He pressed something into my hand, a locket, warm from his skin. "Inside," he said, "you'll find the truth." I tried to pull him with me, But he stepped back. The ceiling cracked above him, a beam collapsing in a shower of sparks. "Go," he said, "before it takes us both." I don't remember how I got out. Only the cold mud beneath my knees as I turned to watch the manor crumble into itself, flames devouring the ivy and stone. The storm screamed louder than I did, and then silence. Dawn came like an apology. The fire had died, leaving only smoke and the charred skeleton of the house. The air smelled of ash and rain. In my palm, the locket was still warm. I opened it carefully. Inside, a faded photograph. A woman who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same sorrow. And beside her, a much younger Adrian. On the back, in delicate handwriting, "For when she returns." I never found Adrian's body. The authorities said the storm must have swept through before rescue could reach him. But sometimes, when the wind is strong enough, I swear I hear his voice in it. Calm, steady, promising what he never got to say. "You're safe here, for now." And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see roses blooming again. Dark, impossible, alive. The devil's garden lives on.